Thanks for being on time. I really do appreciate it. We have quite a few folks still logging in, so we're going to give them another minute or so to get that finished. Once again, I want to remind you that you do have the ability to ask questions at any point during the program, and we will answer them typically at the end. Also, there are a couple of handouts that are related to today's content, as we will be comparing our Micro OCS series and our XL OCS series. We have some individual marketing documents that are published, typically in printed form. They're also available on our website that kind of show the comparisons between different models within the Micro OCS and the XL OCS series. We call those our accordion folds because of the way they're constructed. So feel free to download those, the digital versions at least, from the handout section of the GoToMeeting control panel, or the GoToWebinar control panel, I should say. Okay, now that we've got that business out of the way, again, we still have plenty of folks logging in, but let's go ahead and prepare to get started. I do want to thank you for joining us. This is our first webinar this month of October, and we have another one coming up next week. And we really do appreciate the time that you have allocated today and that you've been allocating pretty regularly, throughout the past several months. Joining us today is Stephanie Clapper to help me steer the ship. Somebody let Marcy go on vacation, but Stephanie is a able replacement. How's it going, Stephanie?
It's going well, Chuck. How are you?
I'm doing great. All right, let's go ahead and get started. All right, today we're going to compare the Micro Series OCS and the XL Series OCS. Before we get started, I know some of you may be new to the Horner product line and you're wondering what is with this three-letter acronym of OCS. So OCS stands for Operator Control Station. It is the product name of the all-in-one controllers that we have been designing and shipping for many years now. So an all-in-one controller is a automation device that acts like a PLC with built-in operator interface, built-in I/O and networking, communications, data logging, all kinds of great functionality in a single component with the ability to expand and with a single software package for configuring it. And in the case of Horner Automation, we do not charge for our configuration software, which makes a lot of our customers very happy, keeps their cost of ownership low. But one of the questions we get a lot is, which of your products should I choose for a given application? And we have two main product lines, the Micro OCS and the XL OCS. And so a lot of the questions revolve around those products. So that's what we're going to try and do today, or accomplish today, is to help you understand the differences between them, when you should choose one over the other. And in some cases, there is no wrong answer. Both could work really well, for instance, and we'll hopefully provide you more guidance today. As we get started, we're going to do a quick review of what the Micro OCS series is, along with the XL OCS series. We will do some comparison shopping or some comparison of specifications, but we'll try and make it a little more valuable than just scanning through the spec sheets. Try and provide the information you need to do your comparisons and make your choices. We'll also do a model-by-model comparison of some of our more popular sizes. So as an example, the 7-inch size of HMIs or all-in-one controllers is very popular. And we offer several options in that same size. And so we're going to compare those options that we offer to give you an idea, what are some of the differences between those options and why we offer multiple options. So again, we'll do a model-by-model comparison of some key sizes, including the 7-inch. We'll also take a closer look at some of the hardware. So, you won't just be looking at slides. We do have some video clips we'll be showing you of, what the hardware looks like, what's located where, how big is it, all those kinds of good things. We'll certainly talk about applications for these products. Where have we had success? Where have our customers had success in applying both these series of products? As I've mentioned multiple times, we will be covering questions and answers at the end. Okay, comparing Horner Automation's all-in-one controllers, the Micro OCS series and the XL OCS series. So one question that you might want answered is, why does Horner offer both the Micro line and the XL line of products? How do they compare? Which one should I choose for my application? So let's dive in. So let's start with the Micro OCS. So this is our lowest cost series of all-in-one controllers. And these controllers, for the most part, have been around for a couple of years. We have been growing the product line during 2020. We have added the 7-inch size, the X7 model. And early in 2021, we'll be adding a 10-inch model to the family as well. But these are, again, our lowest cost series of all-in-one controllers. And we like to think of them or kind of promote them as the best all-in-one controllers for simple applications. So what is a simple application? Well, it doesn't mean that it's, there's not a lot going on in the application at all. It just means that it's a straightforward application where maybe otherwise you might normally be, using, let's say, a micro PLC or a small PLC. But when you compare our entry-level products with our competitors, we like to feel, based on the numbers and the analysis that we've done, that our entry-level products have more capacity, a better feature set, and a thing that we're really proud of is the software compatibility. So we don't make you switch software packages to use our lower cost package, for instance. The biggest vendor in the United States for automation has a low cost series of products, but it has a completely different set of software than their mainstream line. Which means, that customers need to learn multiple software packages to navigate up and down the product lines. And, customers don't want to do that. And it also makes it difficult to transition one application from a low-end product to a high-end product and vice versa. So we take pride in the fact that we have one software package that programs everything. Again, the Micro OCS, we consider the best all-in-one controller for simple applications. We contrast that with the XL OCS. Now, this is our bread and butter product line. It's been around for some time. Now, when I say it's been around, I just mean that some members of the XL series product line have been around for 10 years, but we've been continuously updating and we've been adding new models to the line as well. Just this year in 2020, we added a new 7-inch widescreen model without dedicated function keys, the EXLW, to the family. So yeah, the series has been around, but we keep updating it and we keep adding models where it makes sense. And we think this is the most functional all-in-one controller out there. When it comes to features and functions and what you can do with the product, if you can use a reasonable percentage of the features, even half of the features that are offered by these products, you're going to get a tremendous value, better than what we think is better than traditional solutions. It's more highly integrated. There are more features and functions as I've just mentioned. And because the fact that our software and our support cost is low, as in pretty much zero, you have a lower cost of ownership. So that's an important factor as well. All right, so that's kind of a quick introduction of what is the Micro OCS and what is the XL OCS. When would you use a Micro OCS controller, the one that's best for simple applications? Well, again, simple applications where every dollar matters. If the controls and the controller are a reasonable percentage of the application cost, the hardware cost, for instance, then it's probably a pretty good bet that it's going to be looked at really closely and every dollar is going to matter for the machine. So in that scenario, it certainly makes sense to start out with a Micro Series controller with the application. Again, applications where you might consider a competitor's Nano PLC or Micro PLC, maybe even in some cases with the very lowest end of this type scenario, maybe even a case where you're using a programmable relay, or you would consider using a programmable relay, but you'd like to be able to do more. In some cases where maybe you're using or your customer is using custom electronics. Custom electronics typically have the lowest per unit cost, but the highest cost to maintain. Because if you're a manufacturer who makes your own controller out of custom electronics, you've got, anytime there are obsolescence issues or design requirements or maintenance requirements for the product, you're on the hook for all those costs that aren't directly related to the cost of the individual product. They're related to maintaining and designing that product. whereas off-the-shelf products have much lower cost in those areas. So certainly custom electronics are if you're using or your customer is using custom electronics, maybe they should take a look at the Micro Series if they're interested in looking to something more off the shelf. Now, when would you use the XL Series OCS? Well, certainly for more advanced applications. Applications where you might otherwise consider a mid-sized PLC or a traditional separates of a mid-sized PLC and an HMI. Maybe a scenario where you're using PC-based control. With PC-based control, you may not be using custom hardware, but you might be using custom software, and that has a cost as well, even if it's not, a direct cost. It's a cost in terms of the resources or engineers that are required, or the fees that are need to be paid to engineering firms to maintain the program, that sort of thing. And similarly, there are plenty of mid-sized manufacturers who make custom electronics with custom touchscreens embedded that look a whole lot like OCS units, except they're all customized. And a lot of those customers could take advantage of simply taking one of our off-the-shelf products, and customizing it for their use to a lesser extent than just designing something from scratch. So before we dive into the differences between the products, let's talk kind of in broad strokes about how they're similar. As I've mentioned already, and I don't want to make this too much of a sales pitch, they both offer great value. They're priced very differently, but their functionality is also quite different in terms of the specifics of what they can do. But in general, they both are full all-in-one controllers. They have logic capability with built-in I/O and operator interface capability and networking and data logging and all kinds of other good features. So even the Micro Series is not bare bones. And as I've mentioned again, both are programmed with the same software package so that you don't necessarily have to choose one series for everything. Now let's take a look at how they're different. In broad strokes, the XL OCS offers higher capacity and higher speed. It has more I/O options, both built-in and expansion. It offers more advanced networking and communications capabilities. That the Micro Series certainly has those capabilities, but to a lesser extent, and with somewhat lesser performance. And if you have an application with kind of a more widely, maybe a wider temperature range than just an environmental range, you can get some wider temperature options with the XL Series than you can typically get in the Micro Series. And one other thing I want to mention as well is that the Micro Series is pretty much 24-volt powered only, whereas the XL Series is 12 or 24 volts. So those are some kind of more broad differences. So now what we're going to do is we're going to kind of go through, function by function. We use a cube to kind of a 4-piece cube to describe the functionality of our products. We talk about control, operator interface or graphics, networking, and built-in I/O. Those are kind of the 4 parts of the cube. So we're going to kind of review those 4 individual parts of the product and compare and contrast there. So without reading through every single spec, you can kind of see what's on the screen there. From a control standpoint, first of all, the Micro Series can handle logic programs up to 256K. Now, if you compare entry-level products on the market these days, many of them are, 64K or 16K or, somewhere in those ranges. So it has a fairly small program size from a Horner comparison, but a pretty robust size when you compare against a lot of the competition. But in general, the XL Series has 4 times the memory from a logic standpoint. It has 10 times the memory from a variable standpoint. So if you've got a lot of variables in your application or you're going to be logging a lot of information to local memory, then the XL Series has a much higher capacity. And then from a pure logic solving standpoint, the XL Series is about 30 times faster than the Micro Series. But don't get deceived by that a little bit. When you have a small application, you're not going to see a 30 times difference in scan rate between the Micro Series and the XL Series. It's only when you start getting into applications that require more memory that you're going to see, some more significant differences in scan rate. So for really small applications, you won't see a 30-time logic solving difference. Another thing about both the Micro Series and the XL Series is that they support advanced ladder, a register-based advanced ladder, kind of a traditional approach. They support a tag-based advanced ladder that we've been putting more emphasis on lately. And they also support IEC languages from a logic standpoint as well. Now, in early 2021, when we released Seascape 10, we've been a little behind, and it's been a large project. We've been a little bit behind. But the next major revision of our configuration software is going to come with a significant upgrade to the IEC languages. And some of those advances, or most of those advances in the IEC languages, will be primarily for the XL series. But they're mostly features that come into play for more advanced applications or larger applications where the debugging is complex, where the programming or the program is large. And so those are where you really need those advanced features. So again, the XL Series OCS will support those advanced IEC features, whereas the Micro Series will not. So that's a control comparison. As we look at the I/O, okay, both series of products have excellent built-in I/O capabilities, but in general, the XL series has more built-in I/O and certainly more options. There are 6 different options in terms of different I/O flavors that you can get built in when you're looking at the XL series, and there's only really 2 flavors with the Micro series. From an analog standpoint, again, if you compare against the competition, the Micro series supports 12-bit analog, which is quite good for an entry-level product. Many of our competitors are only supporting 10-bit, for instance. But the XL series offers 12-bit, 14-bit, and 16-bit options, as well as more options in terms of the types of sensors that are supported directly. You know, things like RTDs and thermocouples and thermistors. Whereas for the most part with the Micro series, you're limited to 4 to 20 milliamps, which is still extremely popular, and a limited RTD range. And we do have some add-ons available for the XL series that aren't there with the Micro series, that you can add some additional I/O, under the hood, if you will. And then I've got a bit of an eye chart here where I kind of show more of the details, the specific numbers of I/O and those sorts of things. But really what I want to cover on this page is really more about, let's talk a little bit about high-speed counting, because both products are very capable when it comes to high-speed counting. They both can support frequencies up to 500 kilohertz, for instance, which is quite excellent. Frankly, most of our competitors are 100K or lower, a lot of them at 20K or lower. But there are differences. The XL series has more functionality built into the high-speed counter with things like latches and preloads, multiple types of match outputs. So if you're monitoring a quadrature encoder and you want to fire an output on a position, you have more options to do that with the XL series, even though you do have a limited capability there with the Micro series. And then if you're looking to do stepper type outputs, for step and direction, that's only supported in the XL series. But we're going to get a chance to take a look at some actual hardware here in a little bit, so you'll get to see what the hardware looks like, especially when it comes to I/O. Now, as we compare the operator interface functionalities between the 2 series, again, the XL OCS, really the theme here is more options and more performance and higher capacity. So you have more choices of different screen sizes, considerably more graphics memory, although there's nothing shabby about 32 megabytes for an entry-level product, which is what we have available in the Micro. You have more pages per project available and more objects per page available when you're talking about the XL series. And as we develop new graphic features, they almost always, like, you never say never, right? But they almost always get implemented in the XL series first, and then sometimes they only get implemented in the XL series. So as we add a lot of graphics capabilities with Seascape 10, you'll find that, some of them will find their way into the Micro series, but some of them won't. Now, communications is an area where all of Horner all-in-one controllers have a lot of capability. A lot of the entry-level products, they'll come with maybe a serial port. Sometimes they come with built-in Ethernet, which is nice. But often, especially with some certain competitors, but often they kind of want you to kind of pay extra for every individual port or feature that you need until you've gotten to the point where you've added a ton of cost to your entry-level product. We don't do that. We give a really good set of basic functionality in our Micro series, and that is true for communications as well. And the first most basic part of communications is really serial connections for things like barcode readers and variable frequency drives and those sorts of things. And we support those very well in the Micro series, although the number of protocols that we support is limited on purpose because there's less capability there. Now, one of the more popular protocols recently from a serial standpoint is a building automation and control network called BACnet. The serial version is called BACnet MSTP, and that's only supported in the XL series. So that's one thing to be aware of. And we also support more PLC type protocols as well. So if you're interfacing with some older PLCs that you may have installed, in your application or in your customer's application, there's certainly more connectivity options with the XL series. And then CAN is our primary means of I/O expansion with all Horner OCS products. It's pretty much plug and play. It's simple to configure. It's robust. It is relatively straightforward. So we've used it for many years. We support it on both series of products, although you have more options in terms of the number and types of protocols with the XL series as well. So again, the theme is pretty consistent, right? More capability and more capacity. Now, Ethernet is more and more critical these days, right? So, just in a quick glance, take a look at this chart. And what this really shows you is the Micro series supports some of the very most popular protocols out there: Modbus TCP, master and slave or client server, Ethernet IP as an I/O device. Those are two of the very most popular protocols out there, and they are supported in our entry-level product. The XL series builds on that with a whole bunch of additional protocols, including BACnet IP, which is the kind of Ethernet-based version of BACnet. And then from a WebMI support, for those of you who aren't familiar with WebMI is our feature that allows you to serve up web pages from an OCS that has built-in Ethernet. So this would work on everything except for the X2, because the X2 doesn't have an Ethernet port. The WebMI configuration options are a little more flexible with the XL series. Whereas with the Micro series, it's very functional, but there's an extra step involved in the configuration setup. So it's not quite the same. But both units can send emails and transfer files to the memory card. Only the XL series supports network time protocol. And then finally, from a peripheral standpoint, here are some of the peripherals that are available for both series, okay? This isn't really a peripheral, but it's something I wanted to bring up at some point during the conversation. I decided to do it here in this slide. But the XL series products are based on a Linux operating system. So now that operating system is not available to the user, so you can't go in there and write your own Linux code or interface directly with, with any of the Linux that's running on the unit, but it is based on Linux, which gives us a lot of options to add features and functions without necessarily having to program all those from scratch from the beginning. That can explain, to a certain extent, for some of you who are tech savvy, that can explain some of the differences between the XL series and the Micro series, in that the XL series has a little more horsepower. It's running more of an off-the-shelf operating system. It has some features, that you'll find, things like USB-A, or a USB host port. It has those sort of capabilities with drivers for things like video and audio, whereas with the embedded operating system Micro OCS, you don't have that. So this slide just kind of shows some of the other things that, some of the other differences, if you will, between the products. Okay, so to kind of wrap up this series of charts that we just went all through, with the Micro OCS, for simple applications, we feel like the Micro OCS is just right. It's got a ton of features. It's got plenty of capacity for a simple application and even for some not so simple applications. And we feel like it's got a feature and function set that's just right. Whereas with the XL series, if you've got a mid-sized application, we're going to offer you everything you could get in the Micro OCS, just with more, bigger, and faster. And it's still going to be a great value, because in those applications, again, you're competing against a traditional, or you would otherwise use a traditional solution, which is far more expensive. A mid-sized PLC plus an operator interface is going to be far more expensive than what we offer. So either way, you're getting a great value. Now, one product that I haven't specifically talked about is the X5. So the Micro series, we have an X2, an X4, and an X7. A 2-inch, a 4-inch, and a 7-inch, and we're going to get into the hardware and show you some hardware videos here shortly. The X5 is kind of a unique beast. The X5 is a bit of a hybrid with a lot of the core circuitry of the XL series OCS in a package that's very similar to the Micro Series OCS. So it's really a little bit of its own animal. Now, it's been extremely popular. It was really the first product that we released in the Micro Series form factor. People really have adopted it. Really what the X5 OCS is all about is just tremendous communications, good performance, and limited local I/O. And we're going to show you a little bit more about the X5 in one of our comparison videos coming up here shortly. So I'll just leave it at that for this particular slide. But keep in mind that with the X5, even though it officially is part of the Micro Series product line, it really is a hybrid between the XL and the Micro. Okay, the next portion of our presentation, we're going to talk a bit, or we're going to take a look at some of, really we're going to look at 3 different sizes of products. We're going to start with the entry level. We're going to move on to 4-inch, and then we're going to go to the 7-inch. Those are 3 of the most popular sizes, not only in terms of unit volume from Horner, but also from, you know, competitive products just in the market in general. So where we're going to start is with our entry-level products, and the entry-level Micro Series product is the X2, and the entry-level XL Series product is now the XLE, or the XLE with Ethernet. Now, many of you who happen to be Horner users who've been using us for a long time, you may still be using the original XLE that doesn't feature Ethernet, but it now is available with Ethernet at the same price. So I would encourage you to take advantage of that if you still have XLE applications. Get the Ethernet version. I'm not going to read through all the specs on the chart there, but you can see just from looking at the products that they have similar screens. There are definitely speed differences. The number of I/O that's available is significantly different. Now, my number for the I/O for the XLE is wrong. I apologize for that. The XLE has 22 to 42 I/O points available in it, not 12. But anyway, so those are 2 products that people often take a look at for an entry-level type scenario. So instead of me covering these products with a lot more detail here, let's take a look at them through kind of a hands-on video with the next section of the program. Let's take a look at our entry-level products. We're going to start with the $235 X2 controller. Now, this is a great little controller for not a lot of money. It does a whole lot. As you can see in the front, it's got a pretty rudimentary type keypad, so no advanced operator interface here. It does have a 2-inch screen, which you can use for, you know, a variety of operator interface type functions. But again, it's utilitarian for sure. But when you take a look really at all the peripherals this thing supports, that's where it gets really impressive. So, you know, it's got serial ports, multiple serial ports on one connector, networking port via CAN, does not support Ethernet, does have USB for programming. It's got 30 I/O points built in, including 4 analog in and 2 analog out. All the terminal strips are removable. It does have removable media in terms of micro SD. It's just a terrific little product for $235, and it programs using Cscape just like the rest of our controllers do. So if you've got an application where you're considering maybe a programmable relay and you'd like to do a little more than that for, you know, granted a little more money, the X2 can be a terrific option. Now, another controller that people often consider from Horner for entry-level type applications is one we've been selling for many years with great success, and that is the XLE. So again, it has a fairly simple operator interface that's key-based, the same 2-inch screen graphics that you find in the X2, but this is this is a XL series product in that, as you can see, it's more of a cube shape. All right, and when we take a look at the back, you see the normal I/O on the back here. The newest versions of the XLE have USB for programming, along with 2 configurable serial ports. And I highly encourage you to get the Ethernet version of the XLE. We call that the XLEE. It's priced exactly the same as the standard model, or the, you know, what has traditionally been the baseline model. So there's really no reason not to get the Ethernet enabled version. So having Ethernet is probably one of the reasons why you might go to an XLEE
instead of, for instance, the X2. But there are a variety of other reasons as well. Remember, the XL series has more I/O options, so they might have the I/O mix that you need for your application that doesn't quite match on the X2, for instance. Or maybe the flexibility of the CAN port where you can get a J1939 or a CAN open version of the XL series product. That might be what you need in your application as well.
That is a look at the XLE versus the X2. So two really good choices on the entry level. You know, the base models range from about $235 to about $385. So there's some price difference there, but a lot of good functionality. And there's, hopefully you've seen some reasons or some differences between the two that'll help you make the decision. So the next size that we're taking a look at is the 4-inch controllers. And we actually have three. They're not all with the identical shaped screen, but they all are 4-inch products, and they're all very popular. We have an X4 Micro, which is part of the Micro series, as you would expect. We have our XL4 on the far right, which is one of the very most popular models in our XL4, and I'm sorry, in our XL series. And we have that hybrid product I talked about a few minutes ago, the X5, which has a lot of the same circuitry as XL, but has some kind of unique capabilities and also some similarities with the Micro series. If you take a look, we'll take a look a little bit more at this chart here before we dive into the video. But from a logic standpoint, the XL4 has by far the most memory. But really the big difference is in the registers. So if you look at that third column over there, you'll see that there's just a lot more memory available for variables with the XL series. Also, from a scan rate standpoint, even though the scan rate is very similar between the X5 hybrid product and the XL4, the XL4 is a fair amount faster because the memory is actually faster. The time it takes to access the memory is faster in the XL4 than it is in the X5. But one of the advantages of the X5 is that it doesn't have a battery for anything other than the calendar clock. So you do get less variable support. It's not quite as fast as the XL4, but it also doesn't have a battery, which is always a good thing. So anyway, that's kind of a quick look at, from a chart standpoint, how these three products compare. And again, we're going to get into applications here in a few minutes. So we'll talk more about applications and, you know, some of the success stories that we've had with these different products. So let's go ahead and take a look now at the hardware for these three products.
Okay, the first 4-inch model we're going to take a look at here is the Micro X4. This is our entry-level 4-inch. It's really in a beautiful package, has a nice 4.3-inch diagonal screen, a real kind of sleek and, you know, plain type look on the front to try and fit in with any machine look at all. A very thin profile, not a lot of depth here, which is a good thing. It'll fit into some pretty tight spaces. Just about every connection on this unit is on the back. So let's take a look here and see what we've got. So we start off with DC power. Now in the case of the Micro series, that's 24 volts only at this stage, okay? From a programming standpoint, we also have a mini USB port, all right? From a serial port standpoint, we have two serial ports on a single connector. So MJ1 are the RS-232 signals, and MJ2 are the RS-45 signals. So those are great connections for things like, you know, RS-232 is good for barcode readers, etc. RS-45 is really a very typical way of interfacing with variable frequency drives, for instance. We support CAN on the Micro series as well, although it is using an RJ45 port, and we've colored it red here to kind of differentiate it from the other ports on the same unit. And then the X4 comes standard with Ethernet, like most of our products do these days. And it has a standard Ethernet connector with, you know, a couple of LEDs on there. Now, really, the only port that's not on the back is the micro SD slot, which you'll find up here. Okay, so we do support data logging and machine maintenance and all those sorts of things from that slot. And then let's get into the I/O. All the Micro series units have the same two options for I/O. All right, They all have their digital inputs, which is 12 digital in, 4 of which are high speed that are connected here on this center connector. This terminal strip here is the analog in and analog out. That's 4 in and 2 out, 4 to 20 milliamps there, although you have some limited RTD capability as well. And then there's 2 different variations on the outputs. This happens to be an X4R, so it has relay outputs. So that's 6 relay isolated outputs. And then you also have 2 low current solid state outputs that are high speed for things like PWM or other high speed output signals. Okay, and you can also use them for some kind of low power digital solid state signals as well. On the relay, I'm sorry, this was the relay version we just talked about, but on the X4A version, there we have 12 solid state outputs instead of 6 relays, and then 2 of those 12 are featuring high speed capabilities. Okay, so this is the X4 Micro Series product. All right, next in line, we have a product that looks very similar from the front, and that's our X5. Now, we talked about the fact that the X5 is kind of a hybrid. It has a lot of characteristics of the Micro Series and a lot of characteristics of the XL Series, and also some things that it has that are unique. So let's start off with the screen. The screen is virtually identical to the Micro X4 screen, although it is a brighter screen. So there is a slight difference there in screen brightness for sure. From a size and profile standpoint, it's basically the same, except that we have more connections on the sides. So in this case, our mini USB port is available here on the side, and we've got some dip switches for serial port termination, whereas on the Micro X4, that product does that all electronically in software. Okay, and then on the top, like many of our small products, we do have the micro SD slot on the top here. All right, getting back to the connections on the back, let's take a look there and see what we've got. So in some ways, it's very similar to the Micro X4, but it's got some extra ports on it. So the 2 serial ports we talked about, those are the same. CAN port, this red port here, that's the same as well as what we just looked at. Same thing with the Ethernet. Although keep in mind, with this unit, you support more Ethernet protocols because it has Ethernet functionality kind of more akin to the XL series than to the Micro series. The other nice thing about this product is it has a full-size USB port on it, which is unique for this product. And it also supports Horner's Wi-Fi dongle, so you could effectively add a second Ethernet port that's Wi-Fi. Also, you can connect instead, for instance, you could connect a USB flash drive here as well. So you've got a lot of versatility with the X5 in part because of this full-size USB port. Another thing that's just completely unique about the X5 is its I/O complement. It's really designed to be kind of a communications powerhouse in a small package with just a few I/O points. So it's got 4 analog inputs, 4 digital inputs. All of the inputs that are digital are high speed. And then on the output side, it has 4 digital outputs, 2 of which are high speed. So again, a real unique I/O complement. There's only one option, and that's 4 in digital, 4 out digital, and 4 analog in. Okay, so that's the X5. All right, the last product we're going to talk about in the 4-inch size category is our immensely popular XL4. So the XL4 has a 3.5-inch 4:3 aspect ratio, kind of your traditional 320 by 240 pixels type display. So it's not 4.3 diagonal, but 3.5. Okay, and it also still has the traditional dedicated system button as well as the function keys. And then in the case of the XL series and the XL4 specifically, it's very much a cube type shape. So it is deeper, but it takes up a little less space, I guess, vertically or horizontally than some of our newer products do. But it is definitely deeper. It's a cube, if you will. Taking a look at the what you see on the top and bottom and sides here, you've got your micro SD slot and your dip switches for serial port termination. You've got a mini USB port for programming purposes. Okay, let's carry around to this side. We've got our Ethernet port, as well as the full-size USB, so we can also add Wi-Fi or a USB flash drive to this guy as well. And then we've also got the 2 serial ports on the single connector as well. And then on the bottom, this is where we've got our power input here. And in the case of the XL4, as well as the X5 that I just talked about, we can support either 12 or 24 volt voltage levels, whereas the Micro X4 only supports 24 volt levels. And then we have a more traditional CAN port connector here, where we've got a special double CAN port with network in and network out terminals on the same plug. Okay, so this is the XL4. Again, this would be the performance version in the 4-inch. Has the fastest scan time of the group. Definitely has the most memory in terms of program size, as well as variables, etc. So those are that's a quick look at the hardware for our 3 4-inch options for our OCS all-in-one controllers.
Okay. All right. So that was a look at the 4-inch controllers, and definitely a popular size, and getting more and more popular on the low end. Now let's take a look at the 7-inch models, and in this case we have 3 to take a look at, just kind of like we did in the 4-inch category. And the reason we have 3 is because we now have a new product, the EXLW, that was just released in 2020. So in this case, we've got 2 members of the XL family along with the new X7 Micro. And again, the reason why we have 3 different options is because, 1, it's a very popular size, probably the most popular size today in the operator interface category. And 2, each of these models offers something a little different. The X7 Micro is a price leader. The EXLW offers a great value with higher capabilities. And then a lot of the time, the reason that people pick the XL7 is because of its extra communication capabilities that a lot of OEMs really want to take advantage of. So let's take a quick look at the hardware on our 3 7-inch solutions as well.
The first 7-inch model we're going to talk about is the Micro X7. So as you can see, it's pretty much all screen on the front, no dedicated function keys or anything. It's got that 7-inch 800 by 480 screen, pretty low profile. Now it is a 7-inch model and not a 4-inch, so it's not quite as slim for sure as, say, the Micro X4. When we take a look at the unit on the back, okay, we can see some familiar look here. We have our memory card on the side. In this case, the side instead of the top. Our serial port, 2 ports and 1 connector, CAN port, Ethernet port, USB for programming, 24 volt input power, can handle 12 volts with the Micro series. And then we have our I/O ports here with the same I/O complement that I talked about on the 4-inch, which was 12 in, 6 out relay, or 12 in, 12 out digital. And then the relay model also has a couple of low power solid state outputs as well. A couple things that I want to make sure I mention. One is all these connectors are removable. Okay, so they aren't fixed connectors. They will pull out, no problem. All the products that we sell these days always have removable terminal strips. And that's pretty much a look at the Micro X7. The next 7-inch controller we're taking a look at here is the EXLW. This is the newest member of the XL series. Now from the front, it looks very much like the Micro X7 in that it doesn't have dedicated function keys and it has a fairly sleek look with a plain overlay. However, when we start to turn the product over, we will quickly notice that this is definitely an XL series product. And there's a variety of things that kind of makes that obvious. First of all, of course, is this I/O block here. So with the XL series, we have 6 I/O options available from the factory. Now you can't swap them out in the field. Again, you have to order them from the factory. But the last part digit here before the hardware revision indicates which I/O you've selected. So this happens to be a Model 2 here. So we've got removable terminal strips for the I/O here on the back. And then we have most of our other connections on the side. So let's start with this side, where we have MJ1/2. So we've got an RS-232 port and an RS-45 port here. Here we have MJ3, which is selectable between 232 and 485. We have our traditional terminal strip style CAN connector and our wide range DC power. If we take a look at the bottom here, we've got Ethernet and a single USB port, which again we can use for Wi-Fi or for a flash drive or whatever the case may be. And then on this side, we've got our memory card slot and our USB programming port. Okay, so that is the EXLW, which happens to have the same cutout, for instance, as the Micro X7 and also as the EXL6, which is the 6-inch model with dedicated function keys. The last 7-inch model in our lineup is the very popular XL7. Now, it's pretty obvious that it's different than the last two we've looked at here. As you can see, dedicated function keys as well as a dedicated system button. Also has a little different artwork here on the front. As you flip it up, you'll notice pretty much right away that it has the standard XL series profile. As you can see the I/O here. One thing you may not notice is that the width of the XL7 is about 3/4 of an inch wider than either the X7, Micro X7 or the EXLW. And then when we start to take a look at the other differences, they're primarily on the ports. So if we take a look at the bottom, we can see, hey, look, we've got 2 dedicated Ethernet ports here, which is a very popular thing for OEMs because they can use one dedicated for their machine and they can hand over the second completely separate port so that their end user customers can grab data from the machine if they want over some sort of SCADA connection or maybe an MRP or something else. Also, you'll notice we do have audio ports here. Really only the audio output port is functional. We can use that to play MP3 files to say an amplified speaker, maybe to cue an operator with a audible cue as opposed to a visual one. Let's go ahead and flip the unit over. I'll try and do that here right now. Okay. All right, the other thing you'll notice from looking at the back is we've got 2 CAN ports. So CAN 1 is the one you'll find on pretty much all the XL series products, and that is a C-SCAN port typically, which is usually used to add additional I/O. But with the XL7, you've also got a CAN 2 port, which could be used for C-SCAN I/O, or it could be used for one of the standard field bus protocols like CAN Open, as typically a master, although you could be a slave as well. Also J1939, which is an automotive protocol for mobile type applications or applications when you're interfacing with equipment such as maybe compressors or other diesel engine based equipment. And then there's also the option of DeviceNet as a master, for instance. Okay, so that's the XL7, which is the third and final unit in our model lineup that has a 7-inch screen.
Okay, so hopefully you have a little better feel now, at least between the Micro series and the XL series. You know, as we've kind of summarized previously, you know, the Micro series is great for simple applications. If you have more of a mid-sized application and you need more, better, faster, the XL series is probably your choice. But there are plenty of applications where both could work well. Okay, so let's start talking about different applications for the Micro OCS. And there's literally thousands, but let's just talk about a few to start with. Lighting control, very common application. As many of you know, Horner has a lighting division housed right in the same building as our automation division. You know, we take a lot of pride in some of the innovation that our lighting team comes up with that we can present to the market. And many times our lights are deployed with our controls, which makes a lot of sense. And a lot of the time it's with one of the Micro series products for doing lighting control. So that's a great application. Pump control. There are plenty of great, you know, simple pump control applications, many of which have a single pump, maybe duplicate pumps, but a lot of times a single pump. The Micro series is terrific for pump control applications. Environmental control, HVAC type applications, on a commercial or industrial basis. Building automation in general, although not necessarily applications where BACnet is a requirement, okay? Because BACnet is not supported in the Micro Series. If you have a building automation application where they really want to use BACnet, that's a reason to go up to the XL Series. Fan control, level measurement, tank monitoring. Let's say you have a tank monitoring farm and you want to inexpensively monitor some tank levels or levels of any other kind of vessel. The XL Series will do the job, but the Micro Series will probably do it even more economically. Metering is another good application. Mixing is a good application. Dispensing machines. A simple self-serve type car wash is not necessarily an all-inclusive, completely automated, fully automated car wash, but maybe one where it's more of a self-serve car wash, where it's maybe coin operated or credit card operated, and you're switching between different chemicals and those sorts of things. So that's a great application for the Micro OCS. And really, any small application with a variable frequency drive is a terrific opportunity to use a Micro Series controller, especially the X4 or the X7. You've got a nice color touchscreen there with great communications over RS-485. If there's an Ethernet connection somewhere in the facility, that's available as well. There's data logging, all kinds of great opportunity for a real full integration level with a small controller like a Micro Series controller and a variable frequency drive. Next, let's talk about XL OCS applications, and you're going to see some similar applications. Why are they listed in both? There are some unique ones here, of course. But the reason you'll see some of these applications listed in both is because not all pump control applications are the same. Not all metering applications are the same. Some are more sophisticated than others. So the ones that are more sophisticated, they fit with the XL Series OCS a little bit more than they might the Micro Series. But to kind of go through these, again, more environmental control applications, just ones that are a little more sophisticated. Maybe ones where there's more temperature monitoring, RTDs and thermocouples or thermistors, more of those, or with higher resolution, higher accuracy requirements, than what you would typically get in a Micro Series, which is good, solid 12-bit accuracy, or 12-bit resolution, I should say. But in some applications, you're going to want better than that. Water remediation, crop monitoring and drying, whether that be, kind of traditional grain drying or some other similar application for, other crops. Mobile equipment. Keep in mind the XL Series supports J1939 protocol, which is the standard protocol since the mid-90s for pretty much any vehicle or any other device that is interfacing with an engine. So we can directly talk, or our controllers can directly talk in a lot of cases with an engine control module, getting a lot of instrumentation data that normally would have to be done through instrumentation and sensors and things. We can get that electronically or digitally. So that's a big advantage. And there's a lot of those, a lot of that equipment out there. Another reason why the XL Series is great for mobile equipment is because you have the option for a little wider temperature range as an option, and also it's 12-volt capable. So a lot of those mobile equipment applications are based on 12-volt power. So multiple reasons there to go with an XL Series product for a mobile equipment application. Similarly, automated construction equipment, whether that be off-road or whether it be something in a factory where you're actually constructing, pre-constructing walls or trusses or whatever the case may be. There's a lot of good opportunities there with the XL Series products. More sophisticated chemical metering, more sophisticated pump control, maybe offshore pump control. We've had plenty of success in that application. High-speed packaging equipment. Now, of course, there's all kinds of definitions of high speed. There are certainly controllers that are faster than the XL Series OCS for super high-speed canning lines and things like that. So I'm not necessarily talking about that, but certainly we're talking about plenty of packaging applications that are, a step below, high-speed canning application. Facility type controls, like maybe an air compressor that is serving an entire plant. In that scenario, it needs a sophisticated controller, and in that scenario, they probably want to interface it with BACnet. so that the building automation and control network can monitor and control and maintain that piece of equipment that's controlling the compressed air in a facility. And then shipboard automation is another great application for the XL series for a couple reasons. Again, getting back sometimes the 12 volts. There are certainly diesel engines involved with J1939, so there's communications happening there. And we also have some approvals on several of the XL series products for shipboard type ABS type approvals. So there are plenty of great applications for both Micro series and XL series, and there's a lot of overlap, and for the reason being that there are a lot of variances in those individual applications in terms of level of sophistication, speed requirements, etc. Let's go ahead and dive into the question and answer session now, and let's see if we can answer the questions here. Let me pull that up. Okay. So what's the difference between an EXL and an XL? That's a question that I got from Jeff. Great question, Jeff. Okay, so in general, the XL series products is really a series of products. And most of those products have in their part number somewhere an XL or some variation of that. So for instance, if I've at one point several years ago, we sold a product called an XL6, and that product was superseded or replaced by an EXL6. Similarly, we had an XL10 model, and that model was replaced by an EXL10. So what's the difference? Well, basically, anytime we replaced a XL series product like the XL6 or the XL10 with a newer, faster, better unit, that was still, for the most part, a drop-in replacement. Same cutout, effectively the same program with just slight variations in configuration. Some slight differences maybe in high-speed counting capabilities, always improved for the better. Slight differences maybe in graphics, again, we always improve for the better. So whenever we don't have a 100% drop-in, like in the case of the XL6 and the XL10, we named the replacements EXL6 for enhanced and EXL10 for enhanced, so that you would have to order a slightly different part number so that you would know, hopefully that would help you know, that it wasn't a pure drop-in, although it is mostly a drop-in. So I hope that helped. Peter commented that the XL7 is used often in marine applications because of its ABS type approval. Whereas the EXLW, the new the new widescreen model that we just offered this year that I reviewed along with the other 7 inches, does not yet have that approval. So he put in a feature request asking if we could try and get that approval for that model as well. So that was a feature request from Peter. Okay, do we have any other questions? Just a quick reminder, for the next couple minutes at least, you can still download our handouts, which is the accordion fold documents for the Micro OCS and the XL and RCC series. They kind of give you the specifications in a kind of in a chart form. You can get that information from our website as well, but we just went ahead and put it up on the screen or on the webinar as well. I think that's it for questions and answers. I appreciate your time today. If you think of something later that you would have liked to have asked and you didn't get your question in time, don't hesitate to send me an email at chuck.ridgeway, RIDGEWAY, @HEAPG.com. So I'll do my best to see that we get that answered. Once again, thanks for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.